And now the National Guard is deploying to where these riots are about to happen, where people are getting a government-sponsored pass to burn down a city over a lie. Right now in the world, there's something going on. It's the trial of Kyle. Kyle's trial. The trial of Kyle. The trial of Kyle Rittenhouse. And it's taken over the headline news ever since it happened. Black Rifle Coffee Company got caught up in it because he was wearing a Black Rifle Coffee Company shirt. People have either decided to make this guy their hero or their villain. I never really understood that. Why is this guy anybody's hero or anybody's villain? I don't understand. First, let's talk about this story and the reason why it made it into today's episode. 500 Wisconsin Guard troops deployed ahead of the Rittenhouse verdict. Please stay safe out there, guys. It probably won't be pretty. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers has deployed 500 National Guard troops to the Kenosha area as the homicide trial of Kyle Rittenhouse comes to an end. If you guys have been following this, it's been interesting. Closing arguments are, I believe, finished at this point. The guardsmen will remain on standby unless law enforcement requests their backup on the streets. The mission is made up of soldiers from multiple units from the 32nd Infantry Brigade Combat Team, according to the Guard spokesperson, who would not go into detail on where the troops are staged, citing security concerns. Hopefully they're not sleeping in a parking garage. For civil unrest missions, guardsmen often deploy with batons and riot shields, and in some cases M4s with less than lethal ammunition, such as rubber bullet weapons. M4 rifles and less than lethal ammunition, but they could put less than lethal ammunition in their M4s, but that would not be very good. You would probably want paint guns with pepper rounds. Last year, 1,200 Wisconsin troops responded to protests in Milwaukee, Madison, Green Bay, Racine, and Kenosha. I urge folks who are otherwise not from the area to please respect the community by reconsidering any plans to travel there and encourage those who might choose to assemble and exercise their First Amendment rights to do so safely and peacefully. Yeah, good luck with that. We've seen how that's worked. People pretty much have a permission slip to go burn down your city if they feel like it. Because they say that they feel like it, they have a permission slip to go destroy your community. Guardsmen have been deployed frequently by governors in the last few years, especially during civil unrest in 2020. Units responded to dozens of protests, including one in Kentucky, during which guardsmen shot and killed a protester. The protests were mostly reactions to the police killing of George Floyd and other unarmed Black Americans. During that summer, protests culminated in a violent showdown between local guardsmen and law enforcement against protesters in front of the White House. If you guys remember, one reason I think this is important to talk about is we did have that story of that Humvee that took rounds during one of those protests, which are, of course, violent riots. Anybody with common sense would just call it what it is. So there are going to be violent riots in and around Kenosha following whatever verdict comes out of this trial. And I hope that the National Guard stays safe because there's already been cases of National Guard being involved in violent conflict and taking rounds. And if somebody goes out and kills a National Guardsman, that would be an incredible tragedy. Incredible tragedy. Rittenhouse, 18, just to recap, is charged with 6 criminal counts in the deaths of Joseph Rosenbaum, Anthony Huber, and injuring Gage Grosskreutz. In Kenosha, he has pled not guilty on those charges. He was 17 on August 25th, 2020, when he carried an assault rifle on the streets of Kenosha during chaotic protest after Jacob Blake was shot in the back by a police officer. Rittenhouse faces a possible life sentence. We stand ready to support our communities during times of need, Major General Paul Knapp says. That's Wisconsin's Adjutant General said in a statement. In close coordination with the governor, we have assembled approximately 500 soldiers to help with the Kenosha community to keep them safe should a request from our local partners come in. The National Guard is deploying to Kenosha, Wisconsin to potentially assist if there are any violent episodes. I suspect, of course, there will be. I'm anxiously hoping I get proved wrong. Why is anyone talking about Kyle Rittenhouse? So I know some of you out there are thinking I'm going to say whether I think he's innocent or guilty or should be on trial. Why is anybody talking about this at all? This is not news. This is not interesting. In fact, every aspect of the public coverage of this story is based on non-truths and imaginary versions of events that we all saw with our own eyes on videotape. I mean, if you've watched it, you know. The people involved were not protesters. They were not engaging in any sort of protest when this happened. They were 2 groups of crazy people who got into a beef on the street, and then 2 people ended up dead and a 3rd badly wounded. And Kyle Rittenhouse shot 3 people and killed 2 in self-defense because he was being attacked. Obviously, Now, here's some interesting stuff. I mean, I obviously think it's self-defense, but why is Kyle Rittenhouse anybody's hero? Why is anybody going to bat for the guy? I mean, he still shot 3 people when he was 17 years old with a rifle that he carried out onto the streets. That's the problem in the first place. And I talked about this in a prior video. The only story here at all is that a kid had a rifle and his parents let him go to this event. That's the biggest story of all. These totally embarrassingly irresponsible parents are not patriots. This is crazy. This is my opinion. These are, of course, my opinions. So let me break down a few things here that I've considered interesting about this case, okay? And why not only do I not think that this is interesting, I don't think that it's news, and I don't think that anybody's having a serious conversation about this. The entire story based on lies and politicization. And to know that for a fact, just listen to what's being said on liberal news channels versus conservative ones. And then there you go. 2 completely different versions of events, 2 completely different accounts, and completely different takes on who this person is. Look no further than that to get everything you need to know about the information that we've been getting in the public. I've heard people say in the trial, because I've been following this too. I mean, I've been following it. It's still like, it's like watching gladiator games. You know, that's really what it is. All of us watching it, we're just, back in time watching gladiator games instead of paying attention to everything actually messed up in the world. It's taking our mind off the truth. And cool, got it. People have said, why did Kyle Rittenhouse bring a gun to Kenosha, Wisconsin? Why did the paramedic guy have a gun? Why did anybody have a gun? Because both groups of people thought they were going to be in danger there and then went anyway. If that wasn't the case, nobody would have brought a gun, period. So people went there expecting violence or expecting a real possibility of violence, or else nobody would have brought a gun. Kyle, this kid who was a kid at the time, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, should not have been there because nobody should have been there. And none of that should have ever been happening. This is at the same time where reporters stood in front of buildings on fire and said mostly peaceful protests. So that completely irrational take on what was happening is an embarrassment, as far as I'm concerned, of media and coverage and what people think of what's going on in the world right now. It's crazy. It's crazy. And then Kyle Rittenhouse gets called a white supremacist. There were no black people involved in this entire thing. There were no black people involved in this entire thing as victims or assailants. And this becomes a story of white supremacy. And to make that point, people have to abstract this story to such an extent that it's actually mental gymnastics to make that make any sense. Okay? It's crazy. It's just completely false. In fact, if that was true at all, people would be mad that one of the people there killed was screaming the N-word out. One of the white people killed was out there screaming the N-word everywhere. And we all saw that on video. But that gets a pass, a complete pass. No big deal, no issue whatsoever, complete non-issue, because he's the victim of a white supremacist. This stuff makes no sense. So then people are talking about, well, the 3 people that were shot were all criminals, including one was a child molester. These were violent criminals. Well, that doesn't matter at all because Kyle Rittenhouse didn't know that at the time. So these are just people. At the time, these are all just anonymous people who don't know each other and could have not known what anybody else's background was. So that hardly matters at all. Just like when George Floyd was killed, which there are, of course, tons of people making comparisons here. It didn't matter if that dude was a criminal, a horrible, it doesn't matter if that was the worst person on earth. The police at the time didn't know that about him. So when they failed to render aid to him when he was dying on the street, that was sad to watch. There's no question about it because that could have been anybody. So you have to imagine that that could have been anybody. And I think that's the big problem with that case and why it made the news so much. Why do these stories make the news? Because they're based on lies. The only reason that these stories make the news at all is because they're based on lies. Look no further than the fact that they're a week into the Ahmaud Arbery trial right at this very moment. Ahmaud Arbery, a black man who the story is was jogging through a neighborhood when he was chased down by 3 older white guys in a truck and shot at near range and killed. And there's a video of that too. And that trial appears to have so much more racial tensions and evidence of racial bias in it, and nobody's talking about that. in comparison to Kyle Rittenhouse. Why? Because people might agree on it and they can't be manipulated as well. So because that story has more agreeable facts and has a victim who could garner much greater levels of sympathy and empathy from both sides, you'll just never hear about it again. Cool. They get a pass. No riots in that city. They get a total pass. Now, again, with the hypocrisy of the media, Jonathan Pentland, let me bring this back around to another military story. Jonathan Pentland, the soldier who shoved a black man and then people attacked his house and drove him and his family into hiding. Black Lives Matter, who I am going to say I believe is 100% a horrible racist group that I could very well see being labeled a terrorist group because they use violence in pursuit of their accomplishment of their political ideology and the threat of violence, which is what's going on right now in Wisconsin, is out there like throwing rocks through the house of Jonathan Pentland, and people commenting on my video about it saying that they know for a fact the victim was 16 years old, an innocent boy. He was a 22-year-old man who was in that neighborhood causing problems for all the days prior, and all of that came out on trial, and nobody corrects the record. Kyle Rittenhouse, who was 17 at the time of this, gets labeled by the same people who were calling the black guy in the Jonathan Pentland story an innocent boy. Kyle Rittenhouse is a grown-ass man. The same people flip reality. It's literally reality flipped on its head. We're living in the upside down of the world. At the same time, people, let me say this, people who say that they care about justice in this trial and they think that Kyle Rittenhouse should be guilty, I don't believe you, because you're the same people that didn't care at all about a young man named Elijah McClain, who was killed by police walking home. He was actually special needs. I believe he had autism, mentally handicapped, walking home from volunteering at an animal care facility when he was tackled by police for looking suspicious, and he was injected with a sedative, and he died there, kneeled on by police. Paramedics not allowed to help him. But all of the story goes to George Floyd for this reason and this reason only. It upsets people, which is the same reason that people are talking about Kyle Rittenhouse, and protesters and rioters really are showing up at Kyle Rittenhouse's trial and not Ahmaud Arbery's. This is the reason, because all of this is not reality. Kyle Rittenhouse is not a hero, and he's not a white supremacist monster. Or he might be, I don't know, but he's definitely not a hero. And he should be nobody's spokesperson. Nobody should be out there politically on one side defending him and politically on the other side attacking him. This is the craziest shit. I'm going to curse. This is the craziest shit I've ever seen. There's no limits to how crazy this stuff can get. And now the National Guard is deploying to where these riots are about to happen, where people are getting a government-sponsored pass to burn down a city over a lie. Other people get a complete pass. You know who else got a pass? Here's another good example, and I'm going to wrap it up soon. During the Jonathan Pentland case, I brought you guys another story of an Army veteran in a grocery store calling the cashier at the register the N-word. The N-word. Over and over again. A stupid N-word is what he said. And people were attacking, threatening to kill, and destroying the home and trying to ruin the career of Jonathan Pentland, and that guy gets a pass. And that's what is constantly happening. And if you guys don't see it, I don't know what to tell you. In the coming days, there's going to be state-sponsored violence on the streets in response to a lie. And I hope that the National Guard stays safe. And I hope that the National Guard stays safe. That's what I hope. That nobody gets killed. No innocent people get killed. No people trying to do the right thing gets killed. That's it. That's what I hope. And if I could just bring to your guys' attention the stupidity surrounding this entire thing. If any of that made any sense to you, if part of your mind is going, oh yeah, maybe I am pretending to care about this a little bit too much or whatever. I don't know. Share these thoughts. Be a little more provocative. Make people think a little bit. Challenge people. Why this story? None of it's in reality. None of it's based in reality. It's all crazy. And so I'm just sad to see it. That's it. I'm just sad to see it. Those are my thoughts on it. Good luck, everybody out there. Please stay safe. What's up, guys? Thanks for watching that clip from our live show. We're live right here on YouTube, Sunday through Thursday, 1800 Pacific Standard Time. If you want, come on by, join the chat. I'd love to hear from you. If you like that video and you want to see more, consider checking out this video right here or subscribing to the channel with this button right here. I look forward to talking to you really soon. I'm out for now.